We need to talk about Dandadan and, more importantly, my boy Okarun. Now, Dandadan has obviously blown up recently and for good reason. Somehow each episode feels like it's 5 minutes long, but over this first season, so much has happened that it's insane to think about. There was a giant alien crab, a demonic turbo granny, it got turned into a house cat, and Okarun lost his, well, you know. And that's just in the first 4 episodes. But today, we're going to be focusing on Okarun and the deeper aspects of his character. On the surface, Okarun seems like a nerdy loser with nothing going for him. And at the beginning, he kind of is. But by taking a deeper look at his character and its symbolism, we can learn a lot about what's going on under the surface of his mind and what we can expect from him in the future. Before we get into this, I do want to let you know that this video will be focused on analyzing Okarun's character and what that means for the future of Dandadan. However, I won't be including any manga spoilers because I haven't watched the manga and I don't want to spoil it for myself or any of you. Now, with that out of the way, one of the most important aspects of Okarun's character and the entire story of Dandadan so far is his shadow. In this case, the shadow is a psychological term developed by Carl Jung. The shadow represents the unconscious parts of a person's personality, traits that they don't recognize or accept about themselves. These often include suppressed desires, instincts, weaknesses, or socially undesirable qualities. In Dandadan, Okarun's transformation while accessing Turbo Granny's powers is a symbolic and physical representation of this shadow. During this transformation, Okarun becomes taller. His hair turns into long white spikes with red streaks, and his personality does a complete 180. He becomes absurdly blunt and confrontational, constantly complaining and letting everyone know just how much they annoy him. At first, this seems like a strange choice from Dandadan's author, to make Okarun seem so annoyed and lazy after transforming. But before jumping into that conclusion, we should dive deeper into what the purpose of Carl Jung's shadow actually is. In Jung's work, he argues that acknowledging your shadow and integrating it into your life is crucial for growth and development. He calls this process individualization, which is all about becoming your true self. The idea is that once you accept the negative parts of yourself and mold them into strengths, you become a far stronger person because you no longer need to hide parts of yourself from the world. And because of this, the world can't harm you because you've already accepted any insult that could be thrown your way, and you've even turned those negative traits into assets. To better understand this, let's break down Okarun's growth into 2 different categories: self versus self and self versus the world. At the start of the story, Okarun struggles with both of these. He has practically no self-esteem or confidence. He constantly walks with his head down, worries about what others think, and avoids making friends because he doesn't believe that he's worthy of attention. This is Okarun's battle with his mind, or as we've titled it, self versus self. But there's another layer to his struggle. Okarun avoids talking to people because he's stuck in his head, agonizing over whether he'll say the wrong thing. That's why he overthinks everything and apologizes constantly, especially when around Momo. This fear creates a mental blockade, making it nearly impossible for Okarun to grow and create new relationships. And this is where his transformation, or in a psychological sense, his shadow, comes in. Okarun's shadow doesn't represent everything he wants to be. If that were the case, it'd be strong and outgoing like Iji. Instead, it represents everything Okarun is afraid to be. It embodies the traits he tries his hardest to suppress. That's why it's flashy and attention-grabbing. That's why it's blunt and confrontational. While Okarun himself is shy and self-conscious, his shadow is loud and unapologetic. When Okarun first transforms, he's horrified and embarrassed by how his shadow acts. But over time, we can see him start to accept it. He begins to transform back and forth without any hesitation, and he doesn't seem as concerned about what he does while transformed. And this marks a major shift in Okarun's character. By accepting his shadow, he gains access to a power that can protect himself and Momo. But he also begins to accept the traits that his shadow represents. This allows him to finally take steps towards individualization. And even though his individualization is slow, we can see progress. Okarun becomes more confident, more comfortable around people like Momo and Auntie Seiko, and even more confrontational at times when dealing with people like Iji. His growth may be gradual, but it's clear he is moving towards individualization. This also tells us something deeper about Okarun as a character. On the surface, he may seem like a one dimensional, nerdy loser, but that's just a facade. Beneath that is a deeply complex person, struggling with self esteem and self acceptance. But by looking at his shadow, we can start to see who Okarun really is. One of my favorite moments that illustrates this is when Okarun calls Momo Babe while transformed. At first, it seems completely out of character, something that only his shadow would say. But later, we see Okarun nearly lose his relationship with Momo because he secretly trains to get stronger in the hopes of impressing her. This moment reveals two important things. First, that Okarun is romantically interested in Momo, which who didn't see that coming? But more importantly, it also shows an egotistical side of Okarun that has been hidden until now. It connects his shadow's boldness with his own suppressed desires, hinting that maybe Okarun isn't that far away from being the confident guy he wishes he was. This creates a bridge between Okarun and his shadow, allowing him to grow closer to his true self. Now that season 1 has ended, it's clear that Okarun has a long way to go before achieving individualization and becoming his true self. But it's fascinating how his shadow not only helps him grow, but also reveals who he really is behind his shy boy mask. It also hints at how Okarun might develop further, and what his endgame as a character could be. The last element I want to talk about is Okarun's shadow's relationship with Momo. Especially in the beginning of the story, Momo is essential for Okarun and his shadow's survival. Sometimes she has to restrain his shadow to prevent it from hurting him or others. Other times, she has to support his shadow, like by protecting it with her aura or using her psychic powers to create openings for it to attack. This dynamic shows that Momo isn't just Okarun's love interest. She's also his symbolic guide, helping him balance his shadow and avoid being consumed by his fears or his desires. This positions Momo as not only his one true love, but also the key to his individualization.